And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, November 20th. I am Josh Engleman, here to break down an 8-game NBA slate. And I'm a little nervous that the show is just going to have weird connection issues once again. I thought I fixed this. We shall see. So I hope I sound okay. I hope I look okay. And I hope we don't cut out in the next hour. But my screen is flickering the same way that it did yesterday. That feels like not what we want to happen. But we're here. Coming off of yesterday's disgusting 6-gamer where Cam Thomas got ruled out at a time where we never expected it. Boston-Cleveland was a really, really weird game. Boston obviously got out in front really quick. We did get the increased minutes from some of these dudes. But did it really, Steven? Is it freezing for everybody? Chat, how's my quality? You guys let me know. I can fix it right now if we need to. So let me know. If it's a bit of a problem, we can fix this immediately. All right. If you guys start to see it being a problem, all right, let's do this. I'm just gonna make it easier right out of the gate. So let's do this. Let's do this. There we go. That'll get us where we need to be. So, not the best view in the world, but this will help. This will help. Josh, that desktop background is awesome. It's just a background in here. My actual desktop background is awesome. I don't think you were able to see that, though. All right, so we're good here. We got this. I'm not sure what's happening now with the way that I had things set up earlier this season, but for some reason, when I try to make that change, it's not ideal. So I think what I'm going to do is just have the man behind the scenes, Brody, build me one out that just looks like this and make it easier. So this is what we got. Two weird things from yesterday. These were my biggest takeaways from what we ended up seeing. And it's not really a DFS takeaway. It's a team takeaway. So I think it's interesting that Jared Allen didn't close in a game where they're missing 4 rotation people. He played 28 minutes. He was negative 16. And he wasn't in a part of the closing lineup for Cleveland. I think that's telling because they need their 4 best dudes to be the 4 best dudes to ever sniff a victory against Boston. And if Jared Allen is going to have any sorts of struggles in those situations, that's a problem because they don't have anything else. So I came away from yesterday's game, Boston-Cleveland, honestly, more pessimistic about Cleveland than I was going into it. Oh yeah, Steven, that would have been a 6-0 yesterday if it wasn't for that. I think he's the guy that got... Now, Ben Simmons got me in my card. I had Allen somewhere though. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, that is concerning. The other, now this isn't a concern, but I did find this one fun to see. Charles Lee, coach of the Charlotte Hornets, my home state team, was not very happy with LaMelo Ball at the end of yesterday's game. In an ultra-competitive game that was back and forth through the fourth quarter, he took LaMelo Ball off the floor with 3 minutes and 47 seconds left in the game, and then never brought him back in because of defense. He was lazy. They ripped him off the floor, and they didn't put him back out there, even in situations where they needed offense. So it's interesting to see that the coaching staff is willing to let LaMelo Ball know that he needs to be less of a piece of garbage when it comes to defense or effort. Yeah, Tepanekla shouting it out now. Noel was waived by the Pels. Yeah, I left him in there and cut his minutes and gave more to Karlo Makovic just because I didn't want to deal with the fact that they signed Elfrid Payton, or they're signing Elfrid Payton. Elfrid Payton, who played with Coach Willie Green at one point in time, and now is going to be coached by him. Elfrid Payton's not in the salary file, so I just nerfed the Noel minutes just to not move anything around. But whether he's available today or not, or we're like moving now that Karlo Makovic is back in, not that he fits that positional scope, but I just needed to hide the minutes quickly. All right, let's get into it though. New Orleans Pelicans, 13.5 point dogs in Cleveland, 221 total. Now, there's not really a lot that we can talk about here. This is, one, they're both on a back-to-back. Both of these teams played yesterday. Pelicans got the shit kicked out of them by Dallas. Obviously, Cleveland dropped their game to Boston. How did I lose that little frame? So we don't know the injury status of both of these teams, and there are huge pieces of it. So for the New Orleans side, obviously we need to find out if Elfrid Payton is available today, and if the Jalen Noel release is official for today or potentially tomorrow. They could be lining that transaction up, but it's possible that doesn't get executed until after today's games. I don't know. That might be weird, but just depending on how that string of transactions works out, that could end up being a little weird. I don't think it matters for anything here. We don't know the status of Trey Murphy. This is a back-to-back. He's still working his way, back into full game shape after having missed the start of the season. So he looks good if he's in. He's probably 15 to 20% owned. He might be the easiest guy to get to from the Pels, but it's also just as likely that he doesn't play. So that'll have some big trickle downs to the rest of the Pels. Who knows? Maybe somebody else sits on this back-to-back. Who knows? Maybe somebody's back off of this back-to-back. We really just don't know anything for New Orleans. They're 2 touchdown dogs in Cleveland, so it's not like it's a great spot. You can still get to Brandon Ingram at $9K on DraftKings. He's going to look good no matter what. He's still $8,600 on FanDuel. So that price tag is very advantageous. He's projected for 25% ownership. All of that makes perfect sense to me. I think you can still go to Brandon Boston if he's going to be playing, 35 or 36 minutes a night. Those price tags are fine. But it's possible we start looking at Jamal Cain for value, or more of Javonte Green. In theory, we can see a little bit more of someone like Karlo Makovic. If Elfrid Payton's available tonight, he's probably playing like 18 to 20 minutes. Not something we're not going to pay attention to him on an 8-gamer. The real key here is you can play Brandon Ingram, and he's going to look like a 10 to 15% owned dude. Brandon Boston is just available because of minutes. And then if Trey Murphy happens to be out, it will create a little value for the Pels. If he's in, he actually looks like a decent play. And you could roll the dice on Yves Missi. He's just never going to be a priority. Lord King Guru. Murray Westbrook combo took me from 29th to 2nd for 2,500 in the single entry on FanDuel. Good work, man. I did not have Russell Westbrook earmarked today or yesterday. I got to him in the other game where Jokic didn't play, and he was terrible. Obviously, he fixed that problem for yesterday. So, pretty annoying. The Cleveland side. We cannot talk about this in any way. This is a team that yesterday had a Q tag, originally a Q tag on Sam Merrill, a Q tag on Isaac Okoro, and a Q tag on Karis LeVert. We didn't have Dean Wade. Ultimately, LeVert and Okoro didn't play. Merrill did. I didn't even project Wade in here right now, and I didn't even notice. So I guess that could have happened. But honestly, I'm not even the slightest bit worried about talking about Cleveland right now. I don't even think it's worth the time. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you saw Donovan Mitchell sit today. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Evan Mobley sit today. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those Q-tag guys are back. It's possible that some of them are still out. There's there's nothing that we can do here to handle all of the potential outcomes. Because every single piece of this that could lead to somebody out has a different sort of trickle to the next spot. So this is going to be a deeper dive type conversation for Cleveland. We need their injury report. We have no idea who's going to be available here. As always, like if the four main dudes are in, any one of those four guys are a decent look. They all look similar to me. On FanDuel, I have the optimal rate for Mitchell, Mobley, Garland, and Allen all at 10%. Joseph Smith, you're going to need a bunch of dudes out for that to even matter. There's basically no scenario where you're playing Craig Porter today, unless the whole team's out. I understand that went okay yesterday, I guess. 15 points, 3 boards, 3 assists. There's basically no scenario where you're clicking Craig Porter Jr.'s name today. Almost zero. He wasn't even really the man. I mean, that's what? 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, what? 20, 24 fantasy points? 25 fantasy points? It all depends on who's out. If they end up having 5 guys out again, then, maybe you're projecting him for 22 or 23 minutes. But there's basically no scenario where you're going there. Joseph, he played 20 the first time because Donovan Mitchell wasn't in, and neither was Sam Merrill. Yesterday I had 3 guys out. That's the only path. And it's basically not a path. It's just not happening. You're going to need at least 3 dudes out to even think about clicking his name. And you won't even click it on FanDuel at 4,200. Not a guy, but could be a guy. We have no idea. Cleveland could, as far as I'm concerned, there's 9 guys on Cleveland today that are questionable. Yeah, I mean, he shouldn't have showed up in any contest. Let me take a look at our post-contest sim for the main yesterday. So, in the fadeaway, yeah, Craig Porter Jr. ended up with an actual ROI of negative 36. He was completely meaningless and useless. Who was it? Where's Johnny at? Is he ever here for the strategy show? Shout out to Dalton Connect. Now, obviously, that ended up changing once Rui was out. You were projecting him for 30 minutes or something at that point. But, yeah, Dalton Connect started making a couple threes, I guess. Good for him. Alrighty. Give me 1 second. My Gatorade is drenched in moisture on the outside. Yeah, Dalton Connect was one. I mean, Russell Westbrook was probably the best play, but Dalton Connect is probably the best real play. I mean, obviously it's Tatum, but you guys know what I mean. Let's go to game number 2 so we could actually talk about something here. Chicago Bulls, 8.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 238 total. This is a massive total. As I look at it, well, maybe I don't look at it. Second highest total on the slate. Atlanta Golden State is at 239. And we've got a game at 220, 220, 206 for Orlando and the Clippers. Holy hell, that's terrible. There's a lot of landmine games here today. So let's talk through Chicago. And out of the gate, we're seeing A decent chunk of ownership coming into Josh Giddey on DraftKings. We are waiting on news for Patrick Williams, who's questionable today, which I think is kind of interesting. I sort of like him on DraftKings as a value play, but he's getting love. Zach LaVine's 10 to 15% owned. Kobe White's 10 on DraftKings. Patrick Williams is 10. Jalen Smith is 10. Dosunmu's 10 on FanDuel. So we're getting a little bit of ownership coming into all these guys. Now, I definitely don't agree with 20% to Giddey. Maybe that looks a little bit different if Patrick Williams ends up out. It's not that I don't think Giddey looks good. To me, he's the second best option from Chicago, but 20% is a little higher than I'd like. I prefer Zach LaVine, 7,100, shooting guard, small forward eligible. To me, he's the best option you can get to from Chicago, but it's not like Kobe White's that far behind him. It's not like Patrick Williams or Giddey are all that far behind him. And it's not surprising. Like, this rotation never changes. These guys always play basically the same minutes. It's just annoying. It's just annoying. Ew. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like, you're going to have 10% of LaVine, 10% of White, 10% of Williams, 10% of Giddey. There's not a priority coming from Chicago. At least I don't think so. You guys like anything specific from the Bulls? I don't see it. That Gatorade's hitting the spot. Now, the Milwaukee side, we've got our first priority, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo. 11,500 on DraftKings at power forward center. 11,700 on FanDuel, just power forward. And he's 50% owned on both sites. Now, do I think that's a little high? I do. But not in any, like, truly crazy way. I have... Like, here's the problem. I know you guys can't really see this as much as you'd like to, so let me see if I can bump that up a little bit. This is just a table of all my projections. I have Giannis 10 points ahead of Shea. And then it's to Trae Young at 47. So 14 more than Trae. We don't have... Where is it? So we have Giannis. There's no Jokic. There's no Wemby. We do have Joel Embiid, but we might have Maxey back. I mean, we don't have AD. We don't have Luka. It's a pretty thin... Like, we don't have all the good dudes at the top end. So, clearly looks great. Clearly going to be highly owned, and he should be. Because the gap between him and everybody else is just massive. So, I don't have anything negative to say about Giannis. It'll be interesting to see where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's ownership is, especially coming off a loss yesterday to the Spurs. Gross loss for the Thunder. For the rest of Milwaukee, Dame is 15% on DraftKings, 20 on FanDuel. Brook Lopez got to 10 on FanDuel. I think he's pretty sneaky. His minutes have been creeping up lately, which makes sense. I mean, they don't have a lot of talent, so they might just have to lean on the guys that can get something done, and Brook Lopez defensively is going to be one of the talented pieces of Milwaukee. After that, it's kind of bleak. You know, there's 10% ownership coming into Taurean Prince, so that's how you know when it's bad. 243 Entertainment. Do not play Embiid. Don't do it to yourself. I'm in Philly. Just wait till you see it first. That is terrible advice. This is DFS. Waiting to see it happen first is how you don't win. You want to put yourself in a position to be first before everybody gets to it. It's the exact opposite thought. I'm not advocating for Embiid in this conversation, but you don't want to be the person waiting until it's already happened because somebody else took advantage of something that could happen faster than you think it can. That's not an advocate. I'm not saying that you should be playing Joel Embiid today or anything like that. We'll get to it. But waiting to see someone do it first, you're already too late. Giannis, huge priority from Milwaukee. Dame, solid option. Brook Lopez, sneaky. Are his stats any different this year? Shooting all down across the board. Same dude everywhere else. Yeah, that makes sense. Less involved offensively, still does the defense stuff. But not much here. Not as much as I was expecting. Other than something that you shouldn't have to watch a show for. Play a bunch of Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's what you listen to me for, right? You guys show up here every morning at 9 a.m. for an hour and think, I wonder what kind of great tidbits we're going to get out of Josh. And he's like, yeah, you should play Giannis. What a take. What a take. All right, Indy and Houston. Another one where, I mean, fully giant Q tags. So still no Isaiah Jackson. Obviously, no James Wiseman. Obviously, we still don't have Nembhard or Nesmith. Q tag Miles Turner, who missed the last game. Q tag Ben Shepherd, who missed the last game. There's nothing we can do here. There's nothing we can do. I guess they signed Moses Brown, I believe. So, keep an eye on that today if Turner happens to be out. I'm almost positive that transaction has gone through. Moses Brown spot track. If he did, that contract hasn't gone through yet. But I'm pretty sure I saw that they were signing Moses Brown. So keep your eye on the news, because knowing whether or not Turner and Shepherd are in will definitely change some things here. We don't have any real ownership coming into Indy. They're 6.5-point dogs in Houston, 231 total. I'll say this much. Based on what I have in here, one of these Q tags are sitting. Whether that's Miles Turner or Jalen Green on the opposite side, something's off. Something's off. But I don't... I kind of like Indy here as some unowned guy or under-owned guys. I have Halliburton 11% optimal, 6% owned. I have Siakam 12% optimal, 6% owned. Mathurin 10% optimal, 7% owned. Turner, 11% optimal, 7% owned. I kind of like these guys a little bit in GPPs at lower ownership. Only person that got to 10% at all is Turner hitting 10 specifically on FanDuel. So I like those main four guys in GPPs if they're not going to get very much representation. 230 total is appealing. I mean, the defense for Houston's kind of scary. But I kind of like picking off some of these indie guys. They're if you knew they were all 7%, I don't hate the idea of being 15 to 20 on one or two of them. We know that the offense is there. It's the defense that's a problem. Their defense is terrible. But offensively, I mean, we could be okay here. Indy is 24th in defense, 7th in offense. So sign me up for GPP options from the Indy side, and that could look even better. We could create a bunch of value if we happen to lose Turner and Shepherd. But again, we're going to wait on Q tags. And that's where it gets complicating for Houston. We have a Q tag on Jalen Green with an illness. And we also have a Q tag on Cam Whitmore now, who could potentially step in and play a little bit. I have him in right now. So those two things, slightly different value. The Cam Whitmore news doesn't matter really at all. That Jalen Green news, obviously massive if he doesn't play. That changes the minutes for all of these guys. That completely changes the usage for all of these guys. And we're seeing the ownership come in right now. 20% to Fred VanVleet on DraftKings, 10 on FanDuel. If Jalen Green is in, he's projecting for 25% ownership on DraftKings and 15 on FanDuel. And to be clear, I completely agree with that ownership on DraftKings. 6,300 looks really good here for Jalen Green. I just outlined it. Indy's defense is awful. He's going to meet no resistance. No one can stop him on the perimeter. Let's just say it. There is no Aaron Nesmith here. Jalen Green, in terms of getting himself to the basket, there aren't too many people in the NBA that have his first step. So if he's in, he's going to find himself with a lot of real estate to get to the rim, especially against second units. When Turner's not on the floor, they have no ability to stop him from getting any sort of penetration. So that's something I want to pay attention to, because if he's out, then we're looking at more of Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, Amin Thompson for sure becomes a very different play. Even Tari Eason, you probably get increased run for Reed Shepherd. So that Jalen Green news is huge because he looks good if he's in, and if he's out, he creates so much more for the rest of Houston. And then we get the other big one, and this might be me under projecting him a little bit. Alperen Şengün is close to 40% owned on DraftKings right now. Now, do I think that comes down a hair? Yeah. Does it stay where it's at if Jalen Green ends up out? Also, probably yeah. He's also 20% owned on FanDuel. We're starting to see the minutes creep back up for Şengün. He played 39 last time out. And then they had a pretty scattered, flat rotation in the front end of their back-to-back. But the previous 3 games for Şengün, 33, 30, and 31. I went to 30 to start because we don't have any issues with anybody else in the front court. So I don't want to go too crazy. But I think you could pretty realistically project Alperen Şengün for 32 minutes today. So I love Şengün. I think Dylan Brooks is totally fine to get to, even though he's awful per minute. I think Jabari Smith is totally fine to get to. Kind of looks more like the Indy side, where he's only 7% owned, but I can see what the upside looks like. You know, every once in a while, you get that 35-minute Jabari Smith game, and it's great. But there's a lot to like for the Rockets. We just don't know for sure which dudes they are. And all of that is dependent upon whether or not Jalen Green plays today. So keep your eyes peeled on that news. In case I didn't say it, and let me go over the schedule here. I am not on the deeper dive tonight. I am off for tonight. So we're getting some different coverage. So let me tell you guys the schedule for today. NFL Strategy Show with Lofty and Greg is coming up next at 10 a.m. We'll have the NHL Strategy Show at 2 p.m. Eric and Spags. That'll be fun. Puppets coming out for sure. Eric and Spags will be on the deeper dive at 5:30. EMAC and Greg will be on Live Before Lock tonight from 6:30 to 7:30. And then Greg and Eric will be your playback duo at 7:30 tonight. And they'll be watching the games for an hour with you guys. So shout out to EMAC for being able to cover my spot tonight. I appreciate that quite a bit. Hit that like button if you're here too. That helps out. Let's go to another game that we basically can't talk about right now. Well, we can talk about one spot at least. So Philadelphia 76ers on the road in Memphis, taking on the Grizzlies. Philly 3.5-point favorites, 219.5 total. Tyrese Maxey is questionable for today, coming back from that right hamstring strain. I mean, your guess is as good as mine if he's available. Based on the line right now, I think Tyrese Maxey is playing. Because if I take Tyrese Maxey out, Philly is not going to be a 3.5-point favorite, and it won't be close. So I think the assumption right now is that Maxey will be back, at least based on the line. If you think Maxey is sitting, you should take Memphis in the points right now. So if Maxey is in, everything changes about Philly, and it becomes very difficult to want to get to anybody here. Except Paul George on FanDuel is still just 7,600. Shooting guard, small forward eligible, pulling 25% ownership right now. Do I think that that might be a hair high? I do. Do I think that it's better for Paul George to have Tyrese Maxey and Embiid back? Kind of. because then people don't have to pay as much attention to Paul George. So Paul George is underpriced on FanDuel, and I get it. Kyle Lowry is out for this one. He has a right hip strain. So I'm expecting to still see 30 minutes for Jared McCain. Not getting any ownership. I don't think it's crazy right now, the way that I have it projected. I don't think it's crazy to get to McCain. I'm very nervous about what his role becomes if everybody's in. He's going to go from a guy that, is like 26 or 27% usage so far to 20 at best, probably. So that will change things up a little bit. But I think you might be able to roll the dice. Rue, what are you talking about? Who makes what lines? Like the sportsbook lines? If you think the lines are terrible, I've got an interesting thing for you to do. Maybe you should be betting on them. Because the betting line on a game is the most accurate piece of information for that game that you'll find in anything. There's essentially nothing more accurate than the betting line. So, whoever makes the lines is the public putting their money on it. And if you think it's wrong, put your money where your mouth is. By the way, that line is spot on. I think the total might be a little bit low, but that line is spot on. Steven, I'm with you. He becomes my worry, though, is that they just simply need him because no one else is any good. Because I think they just want the spacing. Like, if the alternative's Eric Gordon, well, he's cooked. Kelly Oubre's terrible. Caleb Martin is not really that, he's out there to guard the other team's best wing. And after that, you're leaning on, Jeff Doughton or the backup center. So, I see what you're saying, Steven. You mean if Maxey plays, you can't go full minutes. Yeah, I went 32. Makes it so you don't want to go to him. I don't think you can give him the, 35 or 36 he's going to be playing. I misunderstood what you were saying. So it's Paul George on FanDuel and essentially nothing else for me. If Maxey ends up out, you probably feel quite a bit better about getting to Jared McCain. For Memphis, they're on a back-to-back. We don't have their injury report. Vince Williams left the game yesterday with an injury. Marcus Smart ended up not playing. So I don't know if he's going to be in. It's a back-to-back. So I don't totally know if they're going to try to rest Desmond Bane or not. Santi Aldama came off the bench and went crazy. We need more information for Memphis. It's possible we get Zach Edey back. There's 14 dudes for Memphis that could potentially play today, other than Ja Morant. I'm not prioritizing any. If Jackson and Bane are in, they'd be the guys that I'd be willing to get to. I think you can get to Brandon Clark if Edey is out at 4,100 on FanDuel with the power forward eligibility. But it's basically impossible to talk about Memphis. We have no idea who's playing for them today. No clue whatsoever. This is going to be very much a look at it later today once injury reports come out type situation. Matt Brown. McCain is somewhat comparable to Jordan Clarkson. I don't see that. I don't see that. McCain is... We are going to learn that Jared McCain is an elite shooter. I mean, he already is. Clarkson's not really that guy. Clarkson's like the 1998 version of that. Similar across the board for the rest of it. From a assist, complete zeros on defense. not going to ever be a rebounder or anything like that. But okay, Bob Johnson just said this. I think you're getting the wrong Curry. I think he's going to be like the rich man's Seth Curry. And I know people are going to hear that and think that's ridiculous, but like, I mean that as a compliment. That's a really good NBA player if you're the better version of Seth Curry. Because we got to remember, Seth Curry, also one of the greatest shooters in the history of the NBA. I think he's the evolutionary Seth Curry. Let's not forget, Seth Curry has the 8th highest three-point percentage in the history of the NBA ABA. That's the guy that I think Jared McCain becomes the evolutionary version of. Slightly similar in size. Knockdown shooter. But that's my thought process on McCain right now. The evolutionary Seth Curry. And I mean that complimentary. Would I put money on McCain or Connect to win Rookie of the Year? I don't trust that at all. All right, let's get to game 5. Jason Robinson, is Jalen Johnson definitely in today? No, he's questionable. Portland Trailblazers, 12.5-point dogs in OKC, 223 total. This one's wild. So, for Portland, Ayton is doubtful once again. Anthony Simons is questionable. If Simons is in, and we're assuming DeAndre Ayton isn't in, we are currently projecting 54% ownership to Robert Williams on DraftKings. And I mostly agree with it. Like 54 is extreme for sure. He has power forward center eligibility, and he's 4,400. I split 24 and 24 for him and Donovan Clingan. But the fact that you can put him in at power forward is so amazing. He's a 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. I love the idea of getting to Time Lord. I think he looks fantastic on DraftKings. One of the best plays that you can get to. He's my number 2 play in my contenders, and he is a completely different play on FanDuel. He is 5,400, $1,000 more expensive on FanDuel than DraftKings, and center only. No power forward eligibility. So on FanDuel, Portland's not really getting any ownership. It's all 8% or lower. And on DraftKings, no one's really getting any ownership outside of Time Lord, who's getting all of it. And Donovan Clingan is getting to 18, which I think is totally reasonable. The Simons news will matter because that will affect Shaedon Sharpe. That will affect Scoot Henderson. That'll affect someone like Delano Banton a bit. Denny Avdia's minutes can move around if Simons ends up out. So that Simons piece of news will have some effect on Portland. They're obviously running into a buzzsaw. This also becomes a really interesting matchup because Donovan Clingan is going to go through everybody on Oklahoma City. That size difference between Clingan and everything else that OKC has is going to look like an adult playing with children. Because Donovan Clingan is like legit next level big. I've got him listed in here at 7'2", 280. And we're going to be talking about 6'6", 195 Jalen Williams guarding him. Donovan Clingan might have 1,000 rebounds today. The side, he's going to just clean people out, box out style. And it's not like Robert Williams isn't a big dude either. So I really am fascinated by that tactical matchup of what Clingan is in comparison to what OKC is trotting out there. It's kind of nuts. Only thing you really need to know about Portland right now is that you're going to be playing a ton of Robert Williams III, 4,400 power forward center eligible on DraftKings. For OKC, they're on a back-to-back. We have no idea who's playing for them today. Isaiah Joe was out yesterday. I'm assuming he's out today, but he doesn't have to be. Caruso on a back-to-back. Certainly possible that he doesn't play, but we don't know. Maybe they sit Kenrich Williams on a back-to-back. I don't know. We're getting 15-ish% ownership to Shea, around 20 for Dort, 20 for Jalen Williams on FanDuel, where he still has reasonable small forward, power forward positions, 10 more to Cason Wallace, 10 to 20 on Aaron Wiggins. All of it makes sense. The matchup's great. You know, you're not worried about Portland in any way. Shea should carve these dudes up on the perimeter. Dort's just playing bigger minutes. Price is normal. Position looks good. Jalen Williams looks better on FanDuel. Aaron Wiggins certainly fits. And if people start leaving and not being a part of this rotation today, like maybe you get no Joe and you get no Caruso. You start to lean more on Aaron Wiggins and AJ Mitchell. I don't really see the scenario where you're going to get to much like Kenrich Williams or Dylan Jones or Ousmane Dieng. Adam Flagler took like 7 threes in 10 minutes or something crazy yesterday. So I don't think he's relevant. But you want the main guys from OKC here. You want Shea, you want Dort, you want Jalen Williams. And then you just want to wait out the news to find out who's actually a part of this rotation today. Stretch those shoulders out. We got 3 to go. Don't forget, if you guys want to get in behind the paywall at Stokastic, it's very easy to do. There is a link in the description of this video. If you click it, it takes us to a page. Top of the page has the things you need to do to get that month. You got to click the link for one of our affiliates, sign up through them, follow the instructions on the screen. It'll cost you $0 to Stokastic. You won't pay us a cent. You'll just get a month of whichever sport you pick. You make that deposit at whichever one of the partners it is, either a pick'em site or a sportsbook. They're going to offer you bonus bets or a deposit bonus. You're going to get something from that site as well, and a month of our stuff. So it doesn't really get any easier. We've got projections and ownership and advanced data, simulation tools, whatever you could possibly be looking for. We have it on the back end, and you can check it out for free. Big fact. Kenrich Williams isn't going to be playing much blowout run for the Thunder. All right, Atlanta Hawks, 8.5-point dogs in Golden State, 239.5 total. It's a massive total. Jalen Johnson is questionable. These guys are getting people back now. Bogdanovich is back. Vit Krejci is back. Kobe Buffkin is back. So I'm not entirely sure who that ninth man in the rotation is going to be. I made it Vit Krejci. Could be 10 guys. They can split, and it's Garrison Matthews too. I don't think that part we care about too much. Clearly, the Jalen Johnson news is massive. Because if he's in, I kind of like him in GPPs. There's no ownership coming into Atlanta. 4% to Clint Capella on DraftKings. 8% to Onyeka Okongwu on FanDuel. Everybody's lower than that. I like Trey in GPPs here today at no ownership. I like Jalen Johnson in GPPs at no ownership. It's getting tough to click Dyson Daniels' name at this point. He's just so bad offensively. I don't really see it anymore. I think Okongwu is a completely reasonable FanDuel play because of that power forward eligibility. Maybe we end up having to look a little bit more at DeAndre Hunter if Johnson ends up out. Maybe we look a little bit more at Risache if Johnson ends up out. We don't totally know what's going to happen with Bogdanovich's minutes. I only went 20. In theory, it could be more. He's only 4,600 on FanDuel. You can make a case that Bogdanovich is... people are going to freak out. Bogdanovich might just be the best overall player on Atlanta right now. Go ahead, freak out. I get it. I get where it's coming from. I can tell you this. He's got a better overall plus minus from Darko's projection model and EPM's projected model than anybody else on the Hawks. Because as good as Trae Young is on offense, he gives back most of that on defense. And Jalen Johnson's like a year away from making that statement sound stupid. The projection models are very big on Bogdan Bogdanovic. It's interesting. That's all I'll say. People sleep on Bogdan. Way better than people think. Offensively, that dude's good. Okay, the Hawks definitely aren't better without Trae Young, but I understand what you're saying. We got to stop borrowing from the future on Jalen Johnson. We have to. Everybody that's saying it's Jalen Johnson, you're not right. You're probably going to be right eventually, but you aren't right now. Jalen Johnson, it has 55% true shooting on 22% usage right now. That's a 41st percentile. That's a 41st percentile true shooting number. We can't be saying that Jalen Johnson is the best of anything if you have below average true shooting. You just can't. He's shooting 31% from three and 35% from the mid-range. That's just what it is. He's young, man. I'm not saying that he's every day that goes by, it's going to be better and better for him. I know what I'm saying is crazy. Let me be very clear here, because I think this is what the separation is when I say this stuff. I'm not saying that I would choose Bogdan Bogdanovic to be the best player on this team. The thing about plus minus that I think people lose out on is that it is an explanation of how good they are in the role that they're playing. So when I think Bogdan Bogdanovic is like one of the best fifth guys in a lineup that you can get to. If that makes sense. So like Trae Young, for example, on the surface, hugely elite offensive player. But when you start ranking all of those guys, he becomes like the 13th best offensive player. And it's hard to bring up that gap. In his role, when you start comparing him to other people in that role, it comes down. Bogdanovic fits in any sort of situation, has the three ball, not the greatest defender, but not better. But he's the best he's better at his role than anybody else on the Hawks is better in their role. That's the way that those advanced plus minus numbers work. It's not just a one-to-one swap. He's a shooter, that's it. I mean, that's oversimplifying him quite a bit. Above average assist rate. Getting above average steal rate last year. I love the role. Like, obviously, if I'm picking somebody to build a team around, it's Jalen Johnson. But Jalen Johnson is still incredibly inefficient. Atlanta's a weird team, man. They have all these pieces, and I don't think they have any idea what they want to do here. Big facts. That exists everywhere. What do you want to know? I can give it to you. It's in my other model. Prophecy. You couldn't be more wrong there. That's just you saying that you don't understand what you're talking about. Dunks and threes had it for the longest time. Big facts. They had estimated wins added for years. If you think that WAR is a bad stat, you just don't understand what you're talking about. You don't understand what it's trying to do. It's not trying to tell you anything. It's measuring your ability on offense. If we're talking baseball and we're saying WAR, it's measuring your ability on offense. It's measuring the ability of base running. It's measuring the ability of defense. It's taking into account replacement level for each position. If you don't like that, change the numbers. Well, that's not a reason that WAR sucks, that shitty people got into the Hall of Fame. I think that's a bigger judgment on Hall of Fame than WAR. Anyway, Golden State. Kyle Anderson questionable, Steph Curry probable, Kevon Looney probable, DeAnthony Melton out. There's nothing to explain. It's just adding up your value across all the different facets of the sport. There's no sport that we have that is easier to track based on stats than baseball. And it's not even close. Evaluating offensive baseball talent is the easiest thing that we do because we've been doing this for 30 years now. You can say that if you don't want to believe in like the defensive portion of WAR, I can understand that. Maybe you want to move those numbers around. There is no way to move the numbers around on offense in baseball. We know how to do that better than we know how to do it anywhere. They've been doing that shit since I was in high school. Anyway, Warriors. I don't know how you can prioritize anything here on the DraftKings side. Around 10% ownership for Curry, Green, and Wiggins. They're playing everybody 22 minutes a night. One day, Lindy Waters will play 20. The next day, he'll play 2. One day, Kuminga will play 28. The next day, he'll play 18. So I'm paying attention to Curry, Green, and Wiggins. What does Daniels being the best perimeter defender mean? He might also be the worst offensive player on the perimeter. Crisp 30% three-point shooter for his career. 53% true shooting right now. I'm glad he gets steals and stuff. That's great. He's as big of a negative on the offensive side. No, not Buddy Hield. Not anybody here. It's Curry, Green, and Wiggins to me. And that's it. That's it. Knicks and Phoenix. So still no Miles McBride. Everybody else is in for the Knicks. Single-digit ownership to everybody except for Josh Hart, who gets to 10 on FanDuel. I agree. It's getting worse, John C. It's getting worse. No disagreement there. The injuries are starting to pile up. Look, there's a reason the Hawks aren't any good, too. The guys that people think are good aren't as good as they seem. Hard to get to any Nick specifically. Like, obviously, Towns continues to just mash offensively. Prophecy, totally agree there. You want to tell me that base running and defensive metrics are still off? WAR is just a framework. It just tells you how to add these numbers up. You want to discount those numbers a little bit in that calculation? I'm all for that. But the framework of WAR is perfect. You just don't like some of the metrics that are in it. Yeah, Brandon, he also hasn't been playing, which is a good point. If I'm getting to one Nick, you guys know the drill. It's going to be Josh Hart. 7,300 DraftKings, 7,200 FanDuel. I just don't see a priority from the Knicks. I'm going to pick and choose through the starters, and I'm going to go about my day because they all end up looking very similar relative to salary. For Phoenix, we've got this Q tag on Yusuf Nurkic. There's no Bradley Beal. There's no Kevin Durant. If Nurkic is out, then we're getting a bunch of minutes from Iguodala at 3,900. He's going to look like a great value on DraftKings. And I don't mean like a product that comes from Walmart. Mason Plumlee, probably a little too expensive to like legit like him. Devin Booker's getting essentially no ownership. I love him in GPPs. Grayson Allen is the only guy getting love. 20% owned, 4,300 and 4,400. I get it. If he starts again, you're really happy to get to him as a value option. But I see it as Devin Booker as a guy that I would like to get to in a GPP because I think he's very under-owned. And then Grayson Allen is the guy you want. If Nurkic is out, Iguodala for 3,900 power forward center is going to become a really interesting value play. Minutes are up for him lately in these games where we're seeing less of Nurk. Iguodala 32, 26, and 27 over the last three. He's going to look like a solid value if Nurk happens to be out. And then we close it out with the worst game on the slate. But unfortunately, we got some ownership here. Orlando and the Clippers. Lowest total, slowest pace, but Wendell Carter Jr. questionable for Orlando. If he's in, that kind of removes him, Mo Wagner, and Goga Bitadze from anything we want to do. Jalen Suggs looks pretty good on DraftKings at 15% owned at 6,700. He's pulling a lot of ownership on FanDuel. I think that'll come down, but still looks like the best play to me on FanDuel. Obviously, Franz Wagner has become like a completely different thing. You know, fade him at your peril the way that he's been playing as of late. Looks good, like a 10 to 15% guy. John Isaac continues to get a little bit of ownership. That will obviously scare me. And if Wendell Carter Jr. is back, I hate that even more. It could not be less of Anthony Black season. Sometimes I wonder how anybody does this. I love you, Nick. But I'll never understand how we can do something like that. Just a total guy. 4,400 on DraftKings. Like, I can get it. No one's clicking his name today. He's 3% owned. And then we get to the Clippers, who are going to be without Norm Powell today. Now, starting lineup is going to be massive here. It seems like Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be the guy that gets the biggest benefit. I only went 24 minutes. That could be upwards of 28 today. 50% owned on both sites right now. We're going to need more information for sure. The starting lineup will be the thing that matters because replacing Powell is real. A lot of minutes, a lot of usage. Chris Dunn is going to get a little bit of a bump. Harden, obviously, probably going to take a couple extra shots. Zubats is just out there all the time and looks good. Maybe we see Bones Highland or Jordan Miller enter the rotation today. Coffee probably gets a couple extra minutes, but he's dreadful per minute, 0.6. Kevin Porter Jr. is looking like the guy that you need to get to from the LA Clippers tonight, assuming he gets the biggest benefit of no Norm Powell. But everybody's just going to get an incremental bump. As it stands right now, KPJ looks like the clear best value, but we got to remember, Orlando defense is really difficult. The pace is slow. We need the value to come from guys getting minutes we didn't expect. So there we go, guy. I had to rush through it. I got into way too much garbage here, talking about how me personally, dramatically overrating Bogdan Bogdanovic. I know the comments of this video are going to be insane. People are going to light me up, and I get it. I just love him in the role that he's in. He should never be the number one guy or the number two guy or the number three guy on a team. He's like the offensive version of KCP. Fits on good teams. Never a priority. I think KPJ starts. No guarantee. It's the Clippers. It's random. So good luck, everybody. Have some fun tonight. NFL strategy show coming up right now because I ran long. Peace.